Alright, what is up, YouTube family? It is K-Rod here, back with another amazing video for y'all today. Typical live stream video doesn't really do a good job making sure videos are saved properly, so I thought it was saved, and unfortunately it was not. So, yeah, let's get right to it, man. I'm gonna be talking about why I believe Vergil Ortiz beats Terrence Bud Crawford in this video, because I figured it needs a video of its own, because I am of the belief that Terrence Bud Crawford has hit his peak and he is now on the downfall. Not to say that Terrence Bud Crawford isn't a good fighter anymore, but that is yet to be determined if he is successful against a guy like Sean Porter in his upcoming fight, possibly in November. For those of you that don't know, the purse bid will be started, or basically Bob Arum and Top Rank have until this upcoming Thursday to come up with a contractual obligation to set the fight up, so both parties can agree. But if they don't agree, then it's gonna go to purse bid, and whoever buys out that fight will set that fight up, and that will be split 60-40 Terrence Crawford's way for the WBO welterweight championship. So either way, that's good news, to me at least, because that's what a lot of people have been talking about. But as far as I know, the purse bid will start as soon as Thursday is up, depending on what Top Rank and Bob Arum are going to do. I doubt Top Rank and Bob Arum, they're going to put big money up for this fight, because, Bob Arum, he don't give a shit about Terrence Crawford. But either way, I just think Terrence Crawford, he's just, he's just in such a messed up situation where he's already, dug himself a huge hole with Top Rank. And Bob Arum is either going to let him sink or let him swim. But either way, he's going to try to let, Crawford sink, because, he obviously doesn't care about Crawford. And Crawford really doesn't give a shit about his career. So at this point, it's really, a life or death situation where does Crawford have what it's, does Crawford have what it takes to beat a top welterweight contender or former world champion and a guy like Sean Porter? Or does he get his ass stopped or get brutally stopped by any of the future up-and-coming welterweight, top fighters that are soon-to-be champions or soon-to-be world-class, level contenders? And that is yet to be, determined, because Terrence Crawford, has a lot to prove in his, final days as a pro. Which, I am of the belief that Vergil Ortiz could be the man to beat Terrence Crawford, or it could be Sean Porter that could stop Terrence Crawford as well. And let me just talk about, I guess, the fight with Sean Porter as far as the purse bid goes. If the purse bid does happen, we will be expecting either PBC, DAZN, Triller, or any other big top network that's willing to put up money for this fight. And me personally, I like to see PBC take this fight, only because Al Heyman, he is probably one of the best advisors in boxing. He's not a promoter. He obviously just sits back and advises fights. Granted, Al Heyman has done some really dirty shit in the past, and I'm not to say Al Heyman is the greatest person in the world, because he did screw over people like Adrian Broner and some other fighters, which I don't understand why. I think that's something that I would need to look into for another video. But as far as what I see out of this marketability for this fight should be promoted through a PBC fight card, or if not, bring it to DAZN, where Eddie Hearn, he should put up big money for this fight. Make this shit pay-per-view. Don't make this shit a free fight. Make it pay-per-view, because one, this will help out Terrence Crawford's, marketability leading up to an Errol Spence fight. That's if he has balls to fight Errol Spence. I don't think so, but if he is going to that, if he's wanting to go to that direction which I find that hard to believe because as far as I know, I heard Bob Arum said that Crawford has one more fight after Sean Porter fight. So if that's going to be the case, I would say get this fight, out the way and probably just take some bullshit tune-up fight as your last fight. Obviously, Bob Arum probably wants to set up Crawford and Josh Taylor if things do go, his way for victory. But I think Crawford's going to brutally get, stopped by Sean Porter. So if Sean Porter beats the crap out of Crawford, then we'll probably be expecting Crawford, probably facing Josh Taylor for his last fight. Who knows? I don't care. I mean, Josh Taylor would probably even want to take that fight anyway because, it's a marketable fight that people would want to take, to uplift their, career. So, I don't know. I personally think, it's still a step in the right direction, but at the same time, you still have to, wonder, what is Bob Arum planning on doing to Terrence Bud Crawford if he loses to a guy like Sean Porter or a guy like Vergil Ortiz or anybody else that could be a valiant opponent to defeat him in the welterweight division, which we all know Terrence Crawford doesn't want to fight any of those top killers unless they're mandatories, and then Crawford, he has to be sit onto the podium stool to say or to tell to the world if he's willing to fight these guys or not. But let's just talk about Vergil Ortiz. I'm gonna, drift off away from the Sean Porter situation. I think PBC will probably be the bidder, or will be the biggest bid in that purse bid. But if Eddie Hearn comes in or Triller comes in and puts up big money, definitely make that shit pay-per-view. I think that will help out Terrence Bud Crawford's, career if he is successful against a guy like Sean Porter. But either way, it's still a 50-50 fight, and it needs to be marketed at a high level. Fuck Top Rank. So, let's talk about Mr. Vergil Ortiz Jr. Just recently, Vergil Ortiz got a 8th round TKO stoppage over Green Beans, a.k.a. Igis Kapolauskas, Lithuanian, welterweight fighter. And as of recently, Vergil said he wants Terrence Crawford. He doesn't care if he's ready. He wants him now. See, now, this fight itself was for the WBO International Championship, and I was a little bit happy that this fight was a good, solid victory for Vergil, but I felt like, it should have been a guy like Jaron Ennis coming to DAZN and fighting Vergil Ortiz, because I think the problem is that the welterweight division does not have enough smoke that is being put up against each other, and nobody's calling for all the big fights at the welterweight division, which is really weird and very suspect. But Vergil Ortiz Jr. has all the smoke available to him, in which he could fight all these big top names that could give him the opportunity. See, now, the very first 5 opponents that came to mind for me that Vergil Ortiz could have fought would be a guy like 1, Jaron Ennis, 2, Jesse Vargas, 3, Mikey Garcia, 4, Speedy Rashidi Ellis, and 5 would be maybe a Danny Garcia, but I don't think Danny is willing to stay at 147 any longer. And I mean, Keith Thurman could be a option, but Keith Thurman seems to be trolling at the moment, so I would probably take him out. And I wouldn't mind a Jamal James, but I feel like Jamal James wouldn't be available just for the mere fact that, Gabriel Maestre is the WBA interim champion, and he obviously got the robbery victory over Michael Fox because, Michael Fox should have been the real champion, or the mandatory challenger to Jamal James. But, if Michael Fox was the official winner, or if the WBA interim championship was, overturned to Michael, then yeah, Jamal James would have fought Michael. But as far as I know, the WBA had vacated their title, so now they're ordering a bullshit rematch between Michael Fox and Gabriel Maestre, which I still don't ever see that fight even happening. I would hope Michael Fox, he could just bring this shit to a federal court and just get this shit done and over with, because you should not leave it to the WBA. You should leave it to the judges at a federal court, and let's just see what a court case can be said about it, because I think it makes all the sense in the world for a guy like Michael Fox to come out of his way and just do what he has to do to get fair justice. But if he can't, then unfortunately, I would just say beat the crap out of Maestre. Don't leave it to the judges. Knock his ass down as much as you can, and just let your hands go and just get the right victory. I would definitely not want it to be judged by the same bitch that gave you the loss. But get her out the way. She's definitely not judging another fight again. But on top of that, if he's able to have a good, clean, fair judging on that fight, I'm favoring Michael Fox all day. Maestre is tailor-made for him. Michael Fox is the better stylistic fighter. So either way, if Michael Fox was to be next in line right now to face Jamal James, that wouldn't be a good option for Vergil Ortiz. Because, see, the problem is that Vergil Ortiz is not being fed to anybody in the top, 15 in the welterweight division. I would say 15, but I want to say 25. Because it's not like he's that far away from a world title. He can go fight these other guys that fight on other networks. Before anybody tries to come in here and say, oh man, you don't know what the fuck you talking about, blah, blah, blah. You're just talking about all this bullshit out of your own, out of your own perception. There's politics in the way, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it's not. You can easily have these fights ordered through the sanctioning body to tell either the WBO or the WBA to say, hey, I want this guy. Can you order this fight for me so it can be petitioned, and then if it's accepted through any board of committee that's going to be running the executive chains to determine if this fight should be made, then they can order it to be a world title eliminator fight. I don't see how Vergil cannot do that, but now that Vergil is in a tough spot, I kind of feel like Vergil, he's being played around like a fish, in a sandbox, and I don't know what to really say other than Vergil, he needs to start pushing for, for more welterweight contending fights. See, now, Igas Kavaliauskas was a good test, but to my eyes, it should have been Jaron Ennis, Mikey Garcia, Jesse Vargas, Abel Ramos, which that was the next guy that I was going to say, because Abel Ramos, he's available. If Vergil Ortiz wanted to have a real tough fight, he should have had Abel Ramos come up in there, and Abel Ramos, he's a PBC guy, so it's not like Al Heyman's not going to prevent any of his fighters fighting on other networks, other than just say, hey, come over here to our side of the street if we want to make some big money, and then boom, if you get this victory, then I'll do my job to try to elevate you to the next level, so that way there's not going to be any complaints about you wanting to get your title shot. See, now Vergil, as far as I know, he will be the next person in line to face Terrence Crawford if the WBO calls him up, which he just can't activate his mandatory. I don't know why people keep running this narrative to say that you can just activate your mandatory through the WBO. You have to wait for the WBO to call you, and then they initiate you as the mandatory challenger. So either way, it's not easy as many people would think it is, because if it was that easy, then every mandatory would be able to just push for their fight immediately. And not to even say that mandatories cannot get their fight, it's just that whatever is in line for the champion themselves would either have to, one, fight their mandatories once a year, or two, if they plan to unify, the unification bouts always trump mandatories. So that's why it's actually pretty bad as a mandatory to just kind of sit around and just wait for the champion. Sometimes you have to fight other contenders, for the time being, for you to, remain your mandatory position. Which I can understand from a mandatory, perspective, that why would you want to fight another, contending fighter that's trying to take your spot while you're waiting for the champion? Because I guess why people would try to say to me that a Jaron Ennis fight right now for Vergil that should have fought him this past weekend would have been, the right fight before fighting Crawford would define success for Vergil if he won or lost, because at least he's battle tested for Crawford. And Jaron, he has all the tools in the world to beat all these top level fighters, but the problem is that, does Jaron have the mental capacity control to handle those fights? He has all the skills in the world to beat a guy like Danny Garcia or a Errol Spencer or Terrence Bud Crawford, but does he have the tools to handle the mental pressure of those fighters? Because everyone can say that they're ready for a world title, but if your mind and body and your spiritual being is not there, then that's what breaks people down to not be ready for a world title. Don't get it twisted. There has been world title bouts where one guy dominates the other guy, because styles make fights, but still, it's not an easy fight. Anybody could get clipped in a world title bout, and then boom, it's pretty much game over. But for the case of Vergil Ortiz and Terrence Crawford, Vergil Ortiz does have the skills to beat a guy like Terrence Crawford. For anybody that disagrees, I will, try to see the comments after I try to say my piece. I don't think anybody's really watching, and I really don't care, but I'm just going to say what I have to say because I feel like it's important. Vergil Ortiz has, the tools to beat Bud Crawford because, one, Vergil Ortiz, he's a defensive pressure fighter. And a fighter that I like to put him next to would be a guy like Juan Manuel Marquez. Really big puncher, flat-footed, has great timing, and he has a really, really good defensive jab. And the reason why I say defensive is because he uses his jab as an indicator to be there first, before you try to offset him, with a jab of your own. But the good thing about Vergil is that when he comes into the inside, he likes to counter left hook you, or he likes to respond to body shots. Because, the good thing about Vergil is that he's not there to just go toe-to-toe with you. He's there to break you down internally with more inside pressure. See, now, one of Crawford's weaknesses that a lot of people don't seem to see is he is weak on the inside. Not to say he's like Keith Thurman, but he is very, very susceptible, if not closer to a Keith Thurman. Crawford does have pretentious, offense that keeps him at bay, but his defense is not that good, as many would say. Crawford leaves his chin wide open for either a left uppercut or a straight right jab. And the problem with this is that when he meets a guy like Vergil, who is a very unorthodox fighter that uses his jab and he curls it in. He doesn't just go right after you, he curls the jab in. He kind of loops it as he throws a jab. And the good thing about it is that he uses a bit of that awkwardness to make himself susceptible to land those punches. See, now, what Crawford doesn't like to do, he doesn't like to have a rough, rugged fight. Every time when we see him in a rough, rugged fight, he shells up, and then he usually gets broken down with a body shot. See, now, it doesn't happen a lot because a lot of Crawford's opponents that he has fought recently, they all like to headhunt. They don't really work the body as much as they should. Otherwise, Crawford, he would have probably been dropped several times in his career if he had been, pressured to the body more. Because what Crawford likes to do, he likes to use the ring a lot. So Crawford, he's obviously a mover, but he's a motion sidestep type of boxer. He is a boxer puncher, but the way he moves in the ring, he moves like a, how should I say, almost like a Marvin Hagler type of fighter. But he's obviously not Hagler, because Hagler, at least he uses like the ring, but he keeps punching you while he's moving. Crawford, he utilizes like the ring to punch less, but to hit the right punches at you, where he uses a lot more, fluid, straight punches, and then he jabs you to the body if he wants to, but he could also switch it up on you because of his quote-unquote orthodox southpaw switch-up, which I don't find that to be true because Crawford, he really doesn't switch to southpaw a lot, and I don't visualize Crawford as a southpaw. I visualize him more as an orthodox because that's really his most dominant stance. Crawford isn't like this super good southpaw that has all the abilities like any southpaw would, where he uses a straight right jab, he can switch it up by using a left hook and then use an uppercut right counter. It's not like me looking at Errol Spence and then I say, hey, Errol Spence, he can do better as an orthodox rather than a southpaw, because his punches are more dominant with his left hand, over his right hand as a straight jab. And that's simply not true. Errol Spence, he is a natural southpaw. He does not really use orthodox tactics unless he wants to switch it up to, utilize more pressure to a certain position of an opponent's body that he's trying to go after. Which, don't get it twisted, Errol Spence, he has switched it up before, but he doesn't need to do it because as a southpaw, southpaws run boxing, so all you need to do is just work the body or use your jab as a means of applying pressure. And Errol Spence, he's heavy-handed too, so similar to myself, all you need to do is just keep using your jab and then work it to the body. And late game, you just beat the crap out of them, because that if the opponent tries to throw back at you, all you need to do is just step back and then keep jabbing. Because once you step back and then you jab and then you mix it to the body and then you use those counter left hooks or counter right hooks, it's game over. You're gonna knock out your opponent in no time. But Errol Spence, he doesn't need to do that. He's a methodical puncher. He's not just a wild pressure fighter. For Vergil, he's wild, but he does it in the right way to go after the right pressure points at the body, where he breaks you down mentally more than he breaks you down conditionally. Because I think what Vergil has, what Crawford doesn't have, is that he has that heart to have that right conditioning for his body, where it makes it easier for Vergil to win off of straight pressure, where he uses his upper body strength, similar to Canelo in a way, which he does it a lot better than Canelo, in my honest opinion. And he just has amazing timing with his pressure shots. So I think what Bud would do is that when he gets hit by a pressure shot by Vergil, Virgil's just going to press on his ass, and Bud, he's going to, he's going to be afraid. He's not gonna be active like many people say, like, oh, he's just gonna move around in the ring and then he's gonna catch Vergil with something that he don't see, and then Vergil, he's gonna get all scared and then Crawford's gonna knock him out. No, I don't see that shit happening. I see Vergil brutally hurting him, and Crawford will shell the hell up, and then Vergil, he will find Crawford's weaknesses, and then all he needs to do is just work that jab and work that upper body pressure, and then work Crawford's body, and then boom, Crawford gets knocked the hell out and he can't do anything. That is the biggest problem with Crawford. When he gets hurt, he still keeps on fighting. When have we seen Crawford fight back? Or when have we seen him shell up or ever hold whenever he's hurt? No, he keeps on throwing back. When we saw it with him and Gamboa hurts him. Boom. What does Crawford do? He doesn't hold. He still tries to fight back. He did the same thing when Green Beans hurt him. He tried to hold, but then he was still trying to throw. at the same time, and Green Beans was still, chipping him, but it's like Green Beans, he didn't apply more pressure like he should have from the round where he hurt Crawford, and he unofficially knocked him down. So it should have just been a automatic, I should just go after him when he's hurt. Granted, the good thing about Crawford is that he recovers very well when he's hurt, but the problem is that when he gets hurt again, it's like looking at a robot get broken down, and then it takes longer for him to, recover, or for the robot to recover. And that's how I think about Crawford. I feel like his days of handling that much punishment are not the same, and it's almost over, in my honest opinion, because he is not used to dealing with that immense pressure that gives him a extreme tough fight. Granted, you could say to me that Crawford, he could handle the pressure well, and he's gotten a lot more mature with not getting hit all the time, in certain situations where he's in a dogfight. But we really haven't seen him in a dogfight. We've seen him in a boxing fight, where when we see him with Kell Brook, what did Kell Brook do? He just out-timed Crawford. The problem that Kell Brook didn't do was that he didn't move his head around the minute he got caught by Crawford. And then he should have just kept on holding when Crawford was trying to press at the issue. And, Kell Brook still would have survived, a couple rounds, and then he would have went back to his, regular, 1-2 jabs, and then he just needs to move around in the ring more. Which that was the biggest problem with Kell Brook. He didn't move around in the ring more, because he could have easily won that Crawford fight if he just moved around the ring more and out-timed Crawford more with his jabs. But he should have done it to the body more. But either way, I still think Kell Brook is an amazing fighter. He had his reign in the welterweight division, and I give him nothing but credibility. He was daring to be great to fight Triple G for his title at 160. He unfortunately lost, and then he got his eye socket broke, and then he got the other one broke by Errol Spence. So I give nothing but pure respect to Kell Brook. He is definitely one of my favorite British fighters that is unapologetic, and all he cares about is just being the best, and he doesn't use politics to hide himself back. And before anybody tries to say, oh, Errol Spence, he wasn't let the same fighter fighting Kell Brook when he fought blah 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 Sean Porter, and Crawford beat Kell Brook in a more impressive fashion, blah blah blah. Like, motherfucker, do you realize when Errol fought Kell Brook, he fought a Kell Brook that was still coming down from 160, and then he decided to fight Errol Spence because the IBF told him that if you are going to sit out longer, we have to strip you, because Errol Spence was his mandatory. Which, I mean, he could have sit out a couple more months later. I think it took him like 6 months to get back into the ring, which I just thought it wasn't a good idea for him to fight Triple G and then go back down to 147, because now he had to drain all that weight down. Which, I mean, don't get it twisted, he looked good in that fight, but the problem was that the way he rehydrated just didn't make any sense. He should have fought Errol Spence towards the end of the year, and then he would have been ready for Errol Spence, and then it would have made a better fight. Because that was the problem with Triple G. He took Errol Spence, or that was the problem with Kell Brook. I'm sorry. I don't know why the fuck I said Triple G, but we'll just look at Kell Brook's box rec. And let's see how many months it took him after fighting Triple G to fight EJ. Because I'm almost positive that he fought EJ like 6 months later, which I should have, it should have been 9 months, but yeah, right here. So he fought Errol Spence 5 months prior to losing to Triple G. So October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May. Oh, so Yeah, he fought him 8 months later. Okay. Yeah, I mean, eh. Yeah, I mean that's not bad. I would have taken like maybe like an extra month just to feel good, but yeah, I don't like I don't mind this because it's not that bad, of a whatchamacallit. It's not that bad of a fight itself. So either way, after he lost to EJ, he at least got his get back with with three back-to-back victories, and then he fought Terrence Crawford. So yeah, I definitely give Kell Brook all the respect in the world. So yeah, fair play fair play to him. So yeah, Kell Brook, he definitely had his little run. I'd say for a final fight that I like to see before he hangs it up, he should fight Amir Khan, or I don't know, maybe fight honestly like a good goodbye fight or a farewell fight. I don't know, man. Maybe Cusio Clayton. I wouldn't mind that. Or I don't know. Maybe Thomas Delorme. Yeah, I actually wouldn't mind that either. Or what about Jesus Ramos? Yeah, nephew. Or no, fight Josh Kelly. Yeah, beat the crap out of Josh Kelly, or fight Conor Benn. I actually wouldn't mind that. That actually would probably sell well in the UK. If I'm thinking about, just saying what saying what I want to say. But either way, that's pretty much what I have to say. My final thoughts about Vergil is that I think he's an amazing fighter. I think he has all the tools to beat Terrence Crawford. But the problem is that you have to give the man a chance. You just can't make all these assumptions and say Vergil can't beat him, because it's not like we've seen this in the past. Was Layla Ali, when was she ready when she was ready for a world title? Like, I think she had her first shot at like 22 or 23 years old, but was she ready at that time? Like, those are questions that people need to wait and see if the fighter is ready, and then that's when you can make those comments to say, okay, that fighter needs a couple more fights before they can get back up to a world title level. Was Erickson Lubin, was he ready when he fought Jermell Charlo? Many at the time said yes, but come fight night, he got knocked out. So when Lubin got back, went back to the drawing board, he started getting better, face all these top tier level contenders, and then boom. Erickson Lubin has gotten way better as a boxer, and he definitely knows how to hit. It's still questionable if he's actually chinny against a guy like Jermell Charlo, but still, Erickson Lubin, he is definitely on his way to success. The way he's been grinding to get up to the top. And I wouldn't be surprised if Lubin will either be next in line to face Charlo, or if anything, if there's any room to face Brian Castano, I wouldn't mind that either. As far as I know, I think Charlo, he's next in line to face, IBF mandatory and Bakram Murtazaliev, which I favor Charlo beating the living crap out of him, because I don't see Bakram having all the skills to handle Charlo's pressure. And then Brian Castano will face Tim Tszyu. That's a possible matchup. That's not a confirmed matchup. I like, as far as I know, the WBO has been considering Tim Tszyu to be the mandatory challenger to Brian Castano. So if Brian Castano, if he's to face Tim Tszyu, then that's going to be a really tough fight for Tim. Because Brian Castano, he's not coming to lay down. He's going to come in there, and he's coming with bad intentions to knock out Tim. You're not going to beat Tim by simply trying to outbox him. You need to knock him out. Tim, he is a much taller fighter. He has a lot of range, and he knows how to hit just as much as Brian. He knows how to hit too. So whatever Brian is thinking coming into that fight, he better come to think to pressure the crap out of Tim, and knock his ass out. That's just how I see it. I don't see it going well either way, because someone is going to get knocked out in that fight. Same thing with Charlo. Charlo is not going to have a easy mandatory against Bakram. Bakram is a very rough, rugged fighter. That guy knows how to hit. But the problem with Bakram is that he leaves his body wide open to get hit. You know, we've seen him down. I believe he got down by that Jorge Fortea guy. Fortea dropped him or some shit like that. So, I mean, he's very susceptible to getting dropped. But Charlo, he's never been dropped, not once in his career. He almost kind of got dropped by Brian Castano, but when he got his legs, right together and buckled his shit back in, Castano, he got hit hard. Like, Charlo was whooping on him, and Castano was whooping on him. That was an all-time slugfest. So, I don't know, man. There's a lot of questions that still needs to be answered. But either way, I'm all game to see what's next for the future. So let me know what you guys think. Do you believe Vergil Ortiz can beat Terrence Bud Crawford, or if you don't think so, please say what you need to say in the comments below, and I'll see y'all later. And I'm out. Thank you. Goodbye.